We were out skateboarding, and I pulled up to the skate spot in a 92 Civic hatchback. It had no power steering, no power windows. I think I bought it for maybe $3,000. And I pulled into the parking lot, and one of my close friends pulled in next to me with a brand new Mercedes S550. And then my other buddy moved in, parked next to me in a new G-Wagon. And I can't tell you that I wasn't challenged by that. I called my mentor and I was like, hey, Randy, man, my buddy's got some cars. I think they're right. I have enough money to be able to buy a nice car and it won't really change my lifestyle. Do you think I could do that? He said, Mikey, what's your goal? Is your goal financial freedom, or is your goal to live a good lifestyle today?
All right, welcome back to Smart Pro Radio, where we love people and like finance. I'm so excited today because we're going to talk about a topic that I think confuses so many people, but it's one that you really need to get your arms wrapped around and understand. And we have an expert that's going to be talking about it today with us. Joining us today is Mikey Taylor, entrepreneur, investor, founder of Commune Capital, mayor of 1,000 Oaks, California, former pro skateboarder. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 different things. I have to read this out so I don't forget. But man, this is a guy that's done so much and is making a fantastic impact. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for joining us on Smart Pro Radio today.
Thank you for having me.
So in a few of your podcast episodes, there's some quotes that you said I want to pull out and just kind of have you explain them. And so one of them, you talk about ownership is freedom, and you say high income is not wealth, it's rented leverage. What do you mean by that? Because I think I'm going to back that up for a second. I think a lot of people view high income as like, this is what I'm shooting for, right? Like that's so many people. It's to get a promotion. We look at people and their salaries when they sign a big signing bonus in sports, or you see these huge contracts. You also see the other side of it where people have no money. Like, how did you make $77 million as a professional athlete and have no money left over? Like there's nothing there. So I see that side of it, but what do you mean by those statements?
Okay, so I want to start by saying it's not bad to focus on making more money. Yes, I think you should, but it can't end there. So what we typically see is everybody chases more income, and what tends to always happen is as we make more money, we spend more money. And if we're not careful and we're not moving into an ownership position, basically this can become the experience for us. We get the promotion, we make more money, and then all of a sudden we buy a nicer house, we buy nicer cars. Maybe we put the kids in private school. If you're somebody who struggles with comparison, which I really, really would challenge you to work on that, and you're seeing everybody in your friend group step up on their lifestyle and you start doing it as well, what can very quickly happen is every dollar that you make is accounted for and it gets spent. If you are not moving into an ownership position that ultimately puts you in a place where your assets are paying you income, you will not have the option to ever stop working. And so that's really what we're trying to promote is if you focus entirely on making money and then that money is being spent to cover your lifestyle and you never switch over to actually owning assets, you will not have the choice to ever stop working because you need that money to come in to support yourself. And so what I have found is, or maybe better said, the strategy that worked very well for me is when I had my expenses, controlling those expenses, focusing on making more money so that I could increase the margin from what I made and what I spent. And then all those extra dollars, I was getting out to work in assets. And that ended up being massively beneficial for me when I stepped away from my first career because I didn't have to rely on sacrificing my time to then have money coming in. And I think it's one of those things that our culture and our society just doesn't promote enough. Like when we're out talking to friends, everybody talks about how much they made. And then secondarily, all we see is what people spend. The thing about ownership is completely silent. People don't see the investments that I have in the background. They're not seeing the income or the wealth build. They're only seeing the car and the house and the clothes. And so I think it sets us up for failure if we don't understand the difference between making money and then owning assets.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. We see that a lot. Lifestyle creep, it's a huge problem. And you mentioned something. You talked about comparison, and you said people should really work on that. I think about your career, what you've accomplished. How have you avoided that? Because that's a problem for so many. And right now, it's a moment in culture where that's a problem for everyone because of what we consume all the time for so many people.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say it's not easy. It is challenging. I would say, number one, how I attempt to live my life to the best of my ability is I try to follow the kind of examples that God gave us so that we can live a good life here. And that's one thing that's mentioned over and over in the Bible, that comparison is the thief of joy. And so I try to stick to that. Now, when I was younger, it was harder. One of the things that helped me was having a mentor. And I'll give you a quick story when I experienced this. In my first career, I was a pro skateboarder. So I was making money. I was doing what I loved. Everything was good. And I was focused on getting money invested because I had somebody come into my life that helped me understand that viewpoint. Well, what ended up happening is my friends started making money as well. And my friends started buying stuff. And I remember one day we were out skateboarding and I pulled up to the skate spot in a 92 Civic hatchback. It had no power steering, no power windows. I think I bought it for maybe $3,000. And I pulled into the parking lot and one of my close friends pulled in next to me with a brand new Mercedes S550. And then my other buddy moved in, parked next to me in a new G-Wagon. So myself, I'm in a $3,000 Honda. They're pulling up with, I think at the time, $80,000 cars. And I looked right and I looked left and went, oh my gosh, like you guys are balling. And they got out and they actually pressed me. One of my friends said, Mikey, what are you doing in this car? Like, I know how much money you're making. This like cheap guy thing, you're taking it to the extreme. You deserve to have some nice things in your life. And I can't tell you that I wasn't challenged by that. I called my mentor, who was my financial advisor at the time. His name was Randy. And I was like, hey, Randy, man, you know, my buddy's got some cars. I think they're right. I have enough money to be able to buy a nice car and it won't really change my lifestyle. Do you think I could do that? And he asked me a question, and this is what really helped me. He said, Mikey, what's your goal? Is your goal financial freedom? Or is your goal to live a good lifestyle today? And I was like, Randy, my goal is financial freedom. That's where I'm headed. And he goes, okay, I want you to focus on the end goal. Focus on where we're headed, not where we are right now. And having that accountability was really beneficial to me in those early stages. And then now the comparison has just changed. It's more houses and vacations and seeing what my other friends are doing. And sometimes I just have to pray about it. Lord, if I'm being challenged by this, like fill the gap in my heart and help me focus on the things that are important to you.
Hey, if you've been listening for a while, you know that we care about doing things the right way and helping people make choices that truly matter. But here's the thing, you don't have to do it alone. At Smart Pro Financial, we build a custom step-by-step plan that has the potential to help you today, but also guides you into the future you're hoping for. We use Ramsey-inspired investment models, so your money's invested the same way the Ramsey team talks about. And get this, there's no account minimums, because we believe that everyone deserves trustworthy financial advice no matter where they're starting. If you're ready to get started, then click the link below to meet with a Smart Pro financial professional today. You've mentioned it in pieces, but I talk about financial freedom. Like that's another one of those words that a lot of people go, I want that. It looks a little differently for some people. How has that changed from that experience that you had where you said, where your mentor said, is your goal, is it still financial freedom? Yeah, it's financial freedom. How has that view changed from then to now, or has it changed? And what is that to you?
Okay, it has changed. That's the interesting part. So financial freedom at the end of the day means that you have enough money coming in from your investments that amount covers your lifestyle. So it's when you're in a position where you don't have to work, you can choose to work. And that did change for me. And I would say that the big change for me is, number one, my first career was riding a skateboard. And at that young age, I wasn't sure that I had talents that would put me in a position of making money after my career ended. So I was aggressively pursuing financial freedom because I was scared of what my life was going to look like afterward. Fast forward, I ended up having some skill sets that I wasn't aware of that actually put me in a position of making pretty good money. And secondarily, my view of retirement actually changed. When I was young, I had this idea of like not working and, skateboarding the rest of my life or playing golf for the rest of my life. And this one kind of came back to one of the biblical principles is I don't think we are called to retire. I think as we get older, our responsibilities can change, but I actually don't think we're called to just waste our talents on the golf course Monday through Friday. And when I came to that realization, a couple things changed. Number one, okay, I'm going to work for the rest of my life, or at the point of me not, working in a business, I'm going to then donate my time or work with kind of the younger generation to maybe benefit the community. But what I ultimately wanted to get to was the option. I wanted to get to the point where I could choose to work here or choose to go work for a nonprofit or choose to mentor somebody. It's really the choice that I was driving towards. And I think the choice is why financial freedom looks so desirable.
We align with that, which is interesting is a lot of people, their desire when they work with a financial advisor is to retire. And the longer I've been in business and sat down with families, I've had to get a lot more direct with that conversation because I've not seen that work out well for a lot of people, not on the money side, but on the purpose side, where it's going, what am I supposed to do now? And I had a conversation with the client not long ago, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do whatever I want, and I'm just going to, piddle around the house. There was no plan. And I had to tell him, this is a gentleman. I had to say, hey, a man without purpose is a dangerous man. What are you going to go do that's going to give back? And he kind of was taken aback because of the directness of it, but it's just what we believe. We believe in helping people have freedom of time so they have choices to make, to spend with their family, to make an impact. But just to be done, I don't believe that's financial freedom either. So I'm aligned with what you just said there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Speaking of people having to, go into retirement or figure out what's next in their life, I think of the person that's, in their 50s and they got divorced. I think of the person that's 65 and retires. I think of the person that just got laid off and going, what do I do next? You've reinvented yourself multiple times, at least from the perspective looking in at your career, from professional skateboarder to starting a business and selling it to a huge company, to the investor, to where you're at now, to mayor and politics. How have you reinvented yourself in this way? And what kind of advice do you give somebody that's going through, oh my goodness, I didn't think, or maybe I'm planning on changing. Maybe their industry's been disrupted by technology. Maybe their life's been disrupted by things that have come in the way of it. Maybe what their plan changed and they have to start something new. How have you been able to start something new and have what looks like amazing success each time?
Okay, so when my skate career ended, I was in a position of financial freedom. And I couldn't believe how lost I felt when my career was over. And I was in my early 30s. And what was so fascinating is the people I was connecting with were typically in their 60s. What I was experiencing when my career ended was typically what you just mentioned. People experience when their career ends in their 60s and then they don't know what to do. The purpose side is painful. And so there's a couple things that have helped me get through those challenges. Number one, I had to answer the question of why am I here? What is the whole purpose of me being on this earth? And in that question that I was faced with, that's what brought me to really leaning in on my faith and answering or having the answer to that question. Okay, I am here because I was created by God who gave me a skill set to ultimately glorify him. So I had to really work on the foundation part first. And once I understood the foundation, then how I was to apply those skills and talents wasn't easy to figure out. Here's how I did it. One, I was praying a lot. Lord, where are you moving me? Where do you want me to be to ultimately glorify you? And when ideas would come into my head, I would pray about it. Lord, is this where you want me to be? Please open doors for me if this is where you want me to be. If not, close those doors. And what was awesome about that is when a door would close, I wouldn't be as disappointed as maybe I would be if my faith wasn't aligned in a creator. And I would look at it as at going, okay, everything's not working. I'm doomed. I move into depression. All of that was gone. I was more looking at it as a journey that God was taking me on. And when a door opened, I went through it. Now, here's, I think, an important thing to note for somebody who's starting over or somebody who has to reinvent themselves into a new industry. The things that have worked really well for me is you have to be willing to start over and be at level one again. So to give everybody kind of context, when I was a pro skateboarder, I was top 10 in the world for about a decade. And then after that, I started a business that was very successful. We had a very large exit. And I got very accustomed to going places and people knowing who I was. I wouldn't have to go up to people and introduce myself. Everybody came to me. And when I started my current business, Commune Capital, I found myself having to go to conferences and nobody knew who I was. And I had to start over and really humble myself and learn how to walk up to somebody I didn't know. Hey, my name's Mikey. What's your name? What do you do? Build relationships and be willing to get through the beginning stages again. That's not easy because that kind of tips into our ego. And then the next time I experienced it was when I ran for city council and I had to start door knocking and, knocking on doors to residents and introduce myself. And that was uncomfortable. But I think if you're wanting to reinvent yourself and be successful at it, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable again and humble yourself. And then the other thing that I focused on, which was, I think, really important, is continuously remind yourself of where you're headed. So when I started this current business and I was no longer Mikey Taylor, the pro skateboarder, and I started talking about investing online, I got a lot of backlash from the skate community. Anytime I'd look at my social media, the comments were very difficult to read. And what I had to remind myself of is I'm viewed as the pro skateboarder for a time, but 5 years from now, I won't be. 10 years from now, I won't be. And so just focus on the end goal and make sure you're making one step forward every day. And eventually you end up getting there and it ends up becoming a pretty fun journey. But if you're not focusing on where you're headed, you can sometimes get lost in the day-to-day trial. And I think you got to avoid that risk.
No, I got to view some of that backlash online, watching some of your videos, and in the comments section, it cracked me up because someone goes, they're watching this, everyone, oh man, I remember watching this on VHS, DVD, just going back and forth, and someone goes, isn't this guy like a mayor now? And then the comment right below goes, no, worse. He owns some sort of investment firm. I'm like, yeah. Wow, the investment firm's worse than being in politics? Like, what's going on here? But it just speaks to that backlash you talked about. Like, this is so different and counterculture, I guess, to that environment.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yep.
Did you feel like when you prayed and said, okay, where am I supposed to go next? What is the next plan? Is this right? Did you feel that God put you in rooms that you were like, how am I here? How, what's going, how did this happen? Did you have that sense where it was, I see that? Or is it just, you gave you peace? What did that look like for somebody who's listening? Maybe they're not a believer and they're going, what does that even mean? They're just like, what does that look like?
The answer is yes. I still have it happen today. So, who said, Jordan Peterson may have said this a while ago. He said, don't try to control every outcome. View your life as a journey and let the story play out and be excited by things that you weren't expecting. And I do think that makes life more fun. For me, yeah, it happened in the beginning, when I started this current business, I'd be in rooms with bankers and billionaires. Everybody's in suits and I'm in a hoodie. There were times where I was like, what the heck am I doing here? The most recent example is about a month ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was meeting with senators and our Congress representative, and I met with a handful of the institutions. And I'm looking around going, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And my point of view is, I think the Lord or God has a sense of humor to take somebody like me who graduated high school, rode a skateboard, and now I'm overseeing $250 million budget. I'm managing $352 million of assets. I have employees. Like, I couldn't do this on my own. And so, I trip out on it all the time, that I keep being put in scenarios that I definitely know I didn't get here on my own.
No, I love the humbleness of that, because, I've seen with business leaders, the ego and the lack of humility destroy them. And that tells me so much about your character. I think that's really cool that you acknowledge that and see it. One thing, I guess, let's see how's the easiest way to ask this question is, we're talking politics just for a moment here. Maybe not how, but why are you the mayor of 1,000 Oaks, California? Like, why would you want to go do that?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. That one I was not expecting. I'd never thought I'd be in the position I am today when I was 20 years old. The mayor part is really the wild card to me. I would say how it happened at face value is my wife and I were having conversations about the area that we were raising our kids in. And this is the city that I grew up in. It's the city that my wife grew up in. And in that conversation, my wife was basically talking about things that she was concerned about. And I had some wild idea of looking at her and saying, hey, babe, instead of like us focusing on the things we don't have, why don't we focus on trying to fix the things that we want to be accomplished? And my wife looked at me and goes, yeah, like what? What are you going to do about it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And she goes, well, think about it. And so just that conversation led to me trying to figure out ways that I could be involved in the community and maybe focus on making it even better. And we landed on city council. And, in that one, that was one thing that we prayed about. And just for you'll start to see why I am such a believer in all of this not being an accident and actually being by design, is at the point of me deciding to run for city council. My business was maybe 6 years old. It was going through a big growth moment. It was very demanding of my time. My wife was pregnant with number 4, and adding a second job on top of that was probably the worst timing ever in our point of view. And so I looked at my wife and I was like, hey, babe, what do you think about this? And I'm not going to try to convince you. I think it would be cool to do it, but what do you think about it? And she looked at me and went, okay, the timing is crazy. I don't think it's the right time. I do think that you have a skill set that would be very beneficial here. So why don't we pray about it and let's go through the same exercise. If doors open, I want you to run through them. And if they close, they close. And so we basically decided to do that. And I watched every single door open in a way that made zero sense. And I ended up getting elected. And then very quickly, I started seeing that this was another example of me being placed in a position that I could not have done on my own. And I've just watched that play out over the last 25 years. And I think that's where I've really landed on the truth that there is a reason why I'm here, and I'm watching, my creator move his plan in my life. And it's been really cool to experience. Doesn't mean it's been easy. There was a lot of trial that came along with that. But
Sure.
That was one example of just every door opening in a way that didn't make sense.
It's interesting too, from an outside perspective, looking at not only your story, but just where your story is at right now in California. And the reason I bring that up is because, from somebody, I'm recording this right now from Florida. And if you're in Florida, you have a very different view of California, right? And I'm sure people in California have a different view of Florida and Texas and those places. And a lot of it stemmed by maybe not going to those places, not seeing it. It also has a sense of reality built in as well to a degree. And then what you consume or what you see repeated online.
Mm.
So someone might go, Mikey, you were supposed to move your whole company to Texas. That's what everyone in California is doing right now. Nobody's staying there. What difference could you possibly make in California? Right now, people, every video in California that you see or every podcast you hear is people leaving because wealth tax or got to get out. Why is that reality real? Is that a problem that you're going, man, we have to figure this out? This is a real issue of people leaving. Is the American dream or the California dream still even alive there? Like, what does that look like from somebody that is going, how can you make a difference where you're located? Like, it's noble, but how?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say what I have seen when we're talking about something like politics is we usually hear the further extremes. And I think that's because the goal for them is if you're, far on the left, what you're attempting to do is pull the center a tick over to the left. And if you're on the further right, you're attempting to pull the center over to the right. But the majority of people do sit somewhere in the center. And I think it is important to be reminded of that. Now, when it comes to can I make a difference, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but my wife and I, for about 7 or 8 years, were leading a Bible study with married couples inside of our life cycle. And every single year, one family would be moving out of the state, every single year. And very quickly, my wife and I were like, we keep losing families. Like, is the Lord putting us in a position where we're supposed to be here and just help people while they're here and then send them off? And there was a point where my wife and I were praying about where we should be. Lord, are we supposed to be here? And he made it very obvious that he wants us here and he wants us involved. Now, does being involved make a difference? What I would say is I have seen decisions that I have made inside of my city that have impacted our community. And I believe it's in a positive way. And so if everybody has the view of I'm going to get involved locally, and then maybe I'll get involved at the county level, then the state level, then the federal level, yes, I think we can make an impact. But that's not typically what you see. I think most people that want to get involved go straight for a congressional race or a thing that is just much larger. I think the city level is overlooked. And through my experience, that's something I would recommend. If you are wanting to help your area or your state move in a better direction, get involved locally first. I think you will see the most impact made there. And then we have the ability to push it outward.
No, that's great. Well, I can tell you right now, you're blowing some people's minds because they're going, okay, a mayor from California is talking about the Bible study, Jordan Peterson. What is going on? This is breaking everything I have built up about what this looks like in my head. So you are definitely changing some opinions, which I feel like is really unique and awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So one of our missions at Smart Pro is we talk about, we want to be the light on the hill. We want to be a company that makes a difference and an impact with people. We truly believe that right now we're in a moment where so many people lack hope. They feel like I'm always going to be in debt. I'm never going to be able to buy a home. I'm never going to pay off my student loan. I'll always live paycheck to paycheck. And it's just this debilitating, almost just malaise over so many people that we go, well, we have the answers to a lot of these and we want to help pull people out of that. What would you, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, think about where do you see hope? Where do you want to speak hope into people's lives? Maybe it's peace of mind, or what do you feel like out there right now? People should go, you know what? There's still hope out there.
Okay, so I'm going to start because I have been talking a lot about God and faith. For anybody who's listening that doesn't believe in God, I would say you have to understand that the way we speak to ourselves matter. And if we're telling ourselves things like, I will never, I cannot, I will always be in debt, that will become your reality. So I would really try to change the way you speak to yourself. Even if you think you're lying to yourself, you'll be blown away with how brilliant our minds are. Our minds are created to solve problems. So, let's use the example like debt. I'll always be in debt. Instead of you telling yourself I'll always be in debt, start asking yourself, how can I get out of debt? How can I get out of debt? And what's going to happen is your mind's going to start figuring out a path to get out of debt. Once you have the path, then it just becomes making steps forward and applying action. And so I think that's like one of the no-brainers. Stop speaking to yourself in a way that's going to create a victim type of mentality or a position of you being stuck. If you have to lie to yourself, lie to yourself. You'll be blown away with how fast that lie becomes a reality. Secondarily, if you are somebody who believes in God, I think we have a lot to be hopeful for. This life that we live on this earth is the dash between the day we were born and the day that we die. That dash is like this big in eternity. And so I think there's a lot to be hopeful for. After this, we get to spend the rest of our lives pain-free with the Father. I think that is entirely something to be happy about. And so that would be the approach I would take. Focus on what God calls us to be. He does not call us to be fearful. He does not call us to be down. He calls us to be joyful because he did bring a lot of good news. And that's something we celebrated last weekend. And so that would probably be the two recommendations I would give. And then if you don't believe in God, I would really, really encourage you to start reading the Bible and be able to at least answer the maybe three questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what happens after this? And once I answered those three questions, my life got a lot better.
Wow. Mikey, the thing I love about the content you guys put out is that it clears the deck of the chaos. It's real. It's helpful. I do a lot of research before we record episodes, and I've watched, I think, all of your content you put out there as much as possible, even all of it last night listening. And I found I'm just listening because I'm learning. And you don't get a lot of that when it comes to the world of media nowadays. A lot of it's opinions and trying to sell you something. And what you're putting out there is real, and it's good, and it's helpful. So can you tell our guests how they can interact with you, how they can view that content moving forward, so this doesn't have to be the last conversation that they hear from you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm on all the platforms. Just search Mikey Taylor and I'll pop up. And then we do have a podcast as well. It's called Life with Mikey. And you can watch that on YouTube, or you can listen to it on all the podcast stations, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And if you find me on one of the platforms, send me a message. I do my best to respond to everybody. The only thing I'm going to ask is give me some grace. There are a lot of people that are reaching out to us right now, so it might take a little bit for me to get back to you, but I will try my best to do so.
Mikey Taylor, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, my man. It was great seeing you.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode of Smart Pro Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please take a minute and subscribe and share this episode with friends. We really do appreciate it. And make sure that you don't miss any future episodes. We put them out on the first Monday of each month. We'll see you then.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and SmartPro Financial are not affiliated.